What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Ticket with Tippett. I am Gavin Tippett, and today we're going to be going through our week 2 recap. We're going to be looking back at what happened, snap percentages, and target shares, and overall carries, and running back rooms and wide receiver rooms. And we're not going to go through every team because some teams are obvious, like Buffalo, James Cook. We know what's going on there. He is dominating that running back room. So we're going to be going through teams that I saw some significant changes or things that stayed the same that we thought would change, and we'll kind of go through what we expect to see going into the future and kind of just run through the report real quick, let you know where we're at, what you should expect for your fantasy team and your fantasy players throughout the rest of the season. Let's strap in, get locked in, and let's get into it. And we're going to be starting with the Washington running back room. Obviously, Austin Eckler's injury is huge when it comes to who's that next guy up in this offense. And I don't think we have a clear guy who is next up. Obviously, you see the Jeremy McNichols jump up in snap percentage from 19 to 23, and Jacory's go down by about 10%. So I think this is going to be a split RB1, RB2, 1A, 1B type situation. I think McNichols takes a lot of that close to the goal line, Austin Eckler, and passing down work like Austin Eckler had. I think Chris Rodriguez even steps in and gets some passing down and passing touches. And then Jacory Cross-Merritt, he pretty much becomes what he has been, just even more. He is a clear running back. He's going to run the football. He's not going to get much passing work. He's not a good pass blocker. So JCM becomes that obvious gets touches, gets carries guy. But it's going to be a 1A, 1B situation in this running back room. So don't expect anything more from that running back room. Now, moving on to the New York Giants, we see something pretty crazy here. Even I didn't expect this. Tyrone Tracy lost his job to Cam Scatterbo, and that's pretty much all it's going to be. Cam Scatterbo looks like the more efficient back. He looks like the stronger back, more powerful running back, something that they probably want to use throughout the season so that they can make sure that they're not in second and long or third and long territory, that Cam Scatterbo can at least get them 3 to 4 yards pretty much every carry. So Cam Scatterbo obviously jumps up. In week 2, you can see he was at 12% in week 1, and now he jumps up to a 52% in week 2, which is a massive jump. And Tyrone Tracy didn't really drop down too bad. Devin Singletary dropped down by 10%. Tyrone dropped by 30%. Pretty steep drop, but he's still getting some workload, especially in the targets. So he's still leading that running back room in target share. Not too big of a drop for him in targets. 4 to 5, he actually increased his workload in the pass game. So Tyrone Tracy isn't like an absolute cannot start. This is a 1A, 1B situation, but I would prefer Cam Scatterbo going deeper into the season. Tracy's going to become the third down back, and Scatterbo is going to be the guy that they rely on in the goal line. They showed that last week. So Cam Scatterbo is now the guy in New York. Okay, and something we talked about last week with this LA Chargers running back room. Najee Harris came in and took the same amount of carries as Omarion Hampton, and we talked about it last week. I could see this keep on happening into the future. Omarion Hampton just doesn't look like he's taking to the NFL game very well. Najee Harris has obviously had, I think it's 4 or 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons, so somebody that they can really rely on. And if Omarion Hampton can't figure it out within the next couple of weeks, something that could end up taking a complete 180. Najee Harris could end up taking this backfield, and Omarion Hampton could be the pass down back, which is what Najee Harris's role has been in these previous 2 games to start the season. So expect Najee Harris to continue to take the workload. And looking at the running back snap count, you can see that Najee Harris increased by 16% and Omarion Hampton dropped by 18%. So, it's kind of very similar to the running back room in New York. One seems to be the more physical, dominant back that the team would prefer. And Omarion Hampton is just not giving them, kind of like Tyrone Tracy is not giving them what they want in New York. So just kind of expect that to continue. Expect this snap percentage to really even out. I know they want to get Omarion Hampton involved, but if he's not producing, they're going to have to make a move to Najee Harris to keep this offense moving down the field. All right, and moving on to Cleveland's running back room, something that's still very frustrating for a Quinshon Judkins fantasy owner and a Dylan Sampson fantasy owner is Jerome Ford. He still saw a majority of the snaps at the running back room. I don't know why they keep using him. He's not efficient. He's proven that he is not going to be a lead running back in any situation for any team in his career. So why not go with Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson at the running back 1 and running back 2? Make Quinshon that running back 1 that takes majority of the carries, I know he just came back, so we'll probably see that workload increase for him and Jerome Ford drop back. And Dylan Sampson is the obvious receiving back. Even though Jerome Ford did take a lot of targets in this game, Dylan Sampson leads the team still in the season with 11 total. He still saw 3 in week 2, so not extreme. I mean, extreme drop off in the sense that he got 8, but eight targets in week 1 is absurd for any running back that's not named Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey, or Alvin Kamara. So, just take it with what it's worth. Jerome Ford still saw a lot of the carries. I'm sorry, not carries. Still saw a lot of the snap percentage. So you'll see that Quinshon got majority of the carries, and then it followed by Jerome Ford, and then Dylan Sampson. So just keep an eye on that. It's a three-way running back room right now. Going into the future, we should expect for Jerome Ford to just drop completely out of this backfield, and just take a small amount of carries. Quinshon Judkins should be the RB1, and Dylan Sampson should be the third down back in those receiving type roles, and should get heavy workload into the season because they're going to pass the ball a ton. So just be on the lookout for that. And now something that continued into week 2, the Atlanta running back room, we still saw Tyler Algier take a good amount of carries from Bijan Robinson. So 22 carries to 16 carries, they dominated that game against Minnesota for the most part. So they were in control of the ball majority of the time. They were running the football very well. So Tyler Algier has a say in this offense. They're not as pass heavy as we thought they were going to be with Michael Penix, who was a great thrower of the football in college. We just didn't know if he was going to be up to the NFL speed, and it looks like they don't think that he's ready yet. So this offense has been very run heavy, very run dependent. So Bijan Robinson, he's still the RB1, and he's still, an RB1 in fantasy rankings perspectives. But Tyler Algier has now become like a fringe flex play, and you could almost start him in your flex position over some guys like Dylan Sampson or Quinshon Judkins if you had them, because they're relying on him heavily, and he's producing. So just keep an eye on that throughout the season as well. Now looking at Arizona's running back room, the snaps got closer. We talked about this. Trey Benson and James Conner started at 65-33. Now it's at 55-44. And let's look at this target share, because this is something that really, really interests me. James Conner had most of the receiving work in week 1, and Trey Benson completely took that away from him in week 2, having 6 targets. So the target shares are going in Trey Benson's favor. The snap percentage is going in Trey Benson's favor now. I mean, we're getting to the point where we're looking at the rush attempts, and James Conner took a lot of those, but James Conner was not efficient on the ground in this game. So, I mean, Trey Benson is clearly somebody that they want to move to. That contract extension may have just been to buy time for Trey Benson to continue to grow into the NFL. So they're going to use him more and more throughout the season. If you're a James Conner fantasy owner, you're hitting the panic button. He's had 2 solid weeks in fantasy where he scored like 10 and 13 points. Trade him for what he's worth right now, because Trey Benson is continuing to be the 1A, 1B situation, and he's going to continue to grow into his role in Arizona. Now let's look at New England's running back room, something that is really a shame and something that we did not see coming. Trayvon Henderson took the same exact snap share pretty much that he did in week 1, 35% to 32%, and Ramondre Stevenson took the same exact snap share that he did from week 1 to week 2, where he got 65% both weeks. So really disappointing. Ramondre Stevenson, if you picked him in fantasy, congratulations, because he's obviously the workload back in this offense. And I mean, just looking at running back shares, if we go to New England and let's look at the target shares in New England, Travion lost the receiving work to Ramondre this week. So if that happens throughout the season, that is something that we got to be extremely worried about if we're Travion Henderson owners. You probably drafted him in the third, fourth, fifth round of your fantasy drafts, and this is just not what you're expecting from your third or fourth or fifth round pick. He's not producing anything at all on offense. They're not really looking to give him the football as much as we thought they would. So we expected a low snap count to start, but we expected for him to be targeted heavily in that low snap count, kind of like Stephon Diggs is, which we'll touch here in a second. So bad things from Travion Henderson, great things from Ramondre. If you have one or the other, just expect that for probably the rest of the season, because it looks like this is the way it's going to stay. And then let's take a quick peek here at the wide receiver room in New England. So Stephon Diggs is still seeing the highest team target share, and his snap percentage for wide receivers, snap percentage has gone up from week 1 to week 2. And the guy who really lost a lot of his snap percentage was Demario Douglas. So he lost it a lot. Kyle Williams kind of bumped up. So I think it's pretty much consistent. Kayshon Boutte Mac Hollins, Stephon Diggs, and Mac Hollins is going to go down more than likely. He went up in week 2, but the more that Stephon Diggs plays, he's going to play the outside receiver role with him, and Kyle Williams will probably take a lot of snaps from Mac Hollins as well as he continues to grow as an NFL player as well. So keep an eye on that. If you have Stephon Diggs, don't quite get rid of him yet because he just might be reaching back to where he was, a couple of years ago. So keep an eye on that. All right, now let's move over to Jacksonville's wide receiver room. So Brian Thomas still with that extremely low catch percentage. That the chemistry is just not there with Trevor Lawrence, and it's pretty clear. You saw the frustration from head coach Liam Cohen on the sideline, yelling at Trevor Lawrence to hit Brian Thomas in the chest. Trevor Lawrence waving him off, kind of rolling his eyes at him. So things are looking really weird in Jacksonville's offense. The only thing that's for sure is that Travis Etienne is the clear running back one. We'll talk about the running back room in a second, but wide receivers, we don't know what the hell's going on in Jacksonville. Brian Thomas is a dud. De'Ami Brown is playing like he's the wide receiver one. He's getting, 15% of the target shares. He's catching the ball 72% of the time. Travis Hunter looks like he's moving to cornerback more often than not because the better offenses that they play, they're going to need him because that pass defense is freaking awful. So the more that we see this offense progress throughout the season, I think De'Ami Brown is the clear guy in this offense, and I think Trevor Lawrence feels the most comfortable with De'Ami Brown. So expect Brian Thomas to have better weeks, obviously, but if it continues like this, Brian Thomas might be asking for a freaking trade by next season. So you'll see, the Terry McLaurin, the James Cook holdouts, those types of holdouts where these guys, they're like, what the hell? I'm not getting the touches that I want. I'm not, getting the production that I'm looking for, and I want a contract. This could be the situation next year for Brian Thomas where he's just pissed off at the situation. He's like, I hate Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback. Either you're going to give me a big contract or I want out. So expect that from Brian Thomas next season. I would not be surprised if that happens. Now let's look at the running back room. So obviously Tank Bigsby moved on. Travis Etienne continued his workload, saw a 5% increase. But the guy who took a big increase was obviously Bashaw Tutin. We talked about it last week. He was going to see the big increase. And then we saw a good thing in targets as well. So he didn't see any targets in week 1, but he saw 2 in week 2, where Travis Etienne only saw 3. So, kind of the same production level as far as targets go. Travis Etienne is still the main target getter, but the fact that Bashaw Tutin saw more receiving work is a great thing for fantasy owners of Bashaw Tutin and guys who haven't had him. So if you don't have him, go at him right now if he's in your waiver pool. He probably won't be after this week. So go ahead and grab Bashaw Tutin. He's a great handcuff to have in fantasy. And a wide receiver room that we need to take a look at, being that Jaden Reed is injured, is the Green Bay Packers wide receiver room. So it is still Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks controlling most of the work in this Green Bay offense. But Matthew Golden did have what we would consider a slight uptick. Savion Williams actually got a lot of work too in this game. He got a 7% increase, but obviously Jaden Reed's injury. This is going to become a 4-way receiver room between Dobbs, Golden, Wicks, and Malik Heath. Savion Williams is pretty much the gadget guy, so not much to expect there from him. He's going to get his 1 to 2 carries and maybe 1 to 2 targets a game. Other than that, these 4 guys are the main guys. Expect for throughout the season, Matthew Golden to increase his workload. It looks like he's finally catching up to speed. They missed on a deep ball that would have produced, a ton of points for Matthew Golden fantasy owners. So it's not too early to quit on Matthew Golden, but it's not looking good. He only saw 2 targets in a 59% snap share. So not great numbers as far as targets go. But it seems like him and Malik Heath are just the deep ball threats. And then Dontavian Wicks and Romeo Doubs are going to become those intermediate to short target values that, are extremely valuable in fantasy football. So plus Jordan Love seems comfortable throwing to these guys. If you look at the wide receiver target room, the guys leading it, like I said, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs with 6 and 5. And then Matthew Golden with 2. They didn't have to throw the football a ton in this game. So once we see bigger numbers increase with better games that they'll play against, stronger defensive teams that keep them in tight games. So we'll see what happens as they move on through the season. But it's something to keep an eye on with Green Bay. And the next thing that I want to talk on is the Denver wide receiver room. So Troy Franklin is clearly the wide receiver 2 now. There's no question about it. Him and Marvin Mims split the work in week 1. Week 2, Troy Franklin completely took it over. And then Trent Sherfield, Marvin Mims, and Pat Bryant kind of played that wide receiver 3/slot receiver role. So they ran a lot of 2 tight end sets with Adam Troutman and Evan Ingram. So something to really keep an eye on here with Troy Franklin and Cortland Sutton being the main two guys clearly in this Denver Broncos offense at the wide receiver room. So crazy to say. I thought that Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims were going to have similar production throughout the season, but I thought Marvin Mims was a little bit better. He was more of the gadget player that they could use in the offense a little bit better, but it's clear that Troy Franklin and Bo Nix's connection has come into the NFL and is full-fledged. So Troy Franklin, if you don't have him, go pick him up. He's rostered still in like 15% of leagues now, so please go get him right now. Last receiver room, and the last thing that I'm going to talk about today is the Chicago Bears offense in the wide receiver room. This offense is pretty pass heavy, to be honest. I mean, it's not like it's, extremely run heavy. They only have DeAndre Swift right now. Kyle Monangai saw a little bit more work in the running back room. So DJ Moore didn't really have to run the ball as much. I guess they're getting more comfortable with Kyle Monangai, which is a good sign for DJ Moore. He can, go back to working a lot with Caleb Williams and being in that wide receiver room more often than he is the running back room. So that's a good sign for DJ Moore. But Rome Odunze is completely dominating this wide receiver room, and it's not even close. Look at the target shares, 29.4% for Rome Odunze through the first 2 weeks. And then we have DJ Moore at 16.2%. And then Alameda Zacchaeus is higher than DJ Moore in target share at 17.6. And like I said, that's probably partially to do with DJ Moore being in the running back room a little bit, not being in the wide receiver room as much, not having as many receiving opportunities in practice, OTAs, training camp with Caleb Williams. So as he progresses more, that number is obviously going to jump up for DJ Moore. But Rome Odunze is the guy now in Chicago, and there's no question about that and what we should expect from Rome Odunze and DJ Moore in Chicago. Rome Odunze is the number one now. Just get used to it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So those are the highlights of week 2, kind of the things that were most eye-boggling and eye-popping to me. Things that I saw that were worrisome, things that I saw that were very good for certain fantasy owners and not so good for others. So just keep an eye on what is going on in snap percentages. That's probably one of the main things that you can keep an eye on is snap percentages and target shares. So is somebody getting a low snap percentage, but they're getting extremely high target shares? So when that snap percentage increases, they're going to be the guy clearly. Is a guy getting snap percentages but getting no looks? Kind of like Travion Henderson. He's getting those low snap percentages, but he's not getting the looks that we thought he was going to get, heading into the season. So they're not using him as much as we would like. So Travion Henderson is starting to slowly drop down, and Ramondre is becoming the guy, the clear guy in New England. So things like that, just keep an eye on those. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for stopping by. As always, like, comment, share, and subscribe. We always appreciate the love and support that you give us here at Ticket with Tippett. So, trying to grow the YouTube channel, make sure you share this with your friends so they know what is happening in their wide receiver rooms, in their running back rooms for their particular fantasy teams and fantasy players. And other than that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you later. Peace, dope, and love. We'll catch you in the next one.